This tutorial is how to paint a Nighthaunt Glaivewraith Stalker. As you can see here, I've already pre-primed it in white. The colors we're going to use for this are as follows: Celestial Gray, Nighthaunt Gloom, Rhinox Hide, Incubi Darkness, Lead Belcher, and finally, Reichland Flesh Shade. Now before you start, you want to make sure you have a dish of water near you so you can thin your paints. And we're going to shake up the paints to make sure all the pigment is thoroughly distributed through the medium. Now starting out, we'll be starting with the Celestial Gray, and we are going to cover the model. Now what I like to do, get a little bit of water on my palette and a little bit of paint, and you want to thin your paint to where it's roughly the consistency of coffee creamer. And what this is going to do is it's going to help the paint get into all the little recesses like his cloak and the skull, and not cover any of the details. It may take one or two coats of thin paint to cover your miniature. On a miniature like this, letting some of the white show through is not a terrible thing, because as a ghost they are luminous beings, and therefore they are going to have some highlights and some really extreme contrast in the highlights and the shading. So I'm going to go all over the cloak. We're only dealing with the figure itself, the ghost itself. We're not going to mess with the base this time. We're just going to paint the main focus of the figure. More paint, a little bit more water in it. And now with this, you always want to prime your miniatures. Now yes, you could use this Celestial Gray as its base coat, because it is such a thick pigment paint that it will act as a primer. I usually don't like doing that myself because, well, I've just not had good experiences doing that. So here we go. We're going to paint, Celestial Gray all over this wonderfully sculpted cloak. Get the spines on the back. Now I'm not going to touch, well, I might touch the skull with this. Sometimes I'll leave the skull just pure white and then hit it with a wash later on, and I will show you that in a later step. A little bit more paint on my palette. Now Citadel has come out with several really nice paints to help paint up large batches of these guys, of pretty much the entire Nighthaunt range. Nighthaunt Gloom is one, Glaivewraith Flame is another, and Nihilic Oxide. And those give different colored effects with each of them. Glaivewraith Flame is really bright, almost a neon green. As you saw, Nighthaunt Gloom is kind of a dark bluey blue color, and Nihilic Oxide is like a bright, almost neon blue, which looks fantastic on a ghost. Okay. Now this tutorial is not going to win you any painting contests, sorry guys, but what it will do is allow you to get some decent tabletop miniatures done quickly. So, you know, this is some of these techniques, these are basic techniques. This isn't going to win you a golden demon or a crystal brush or anything like that. But it's a good place for some of you beginners to learn. Okay. So as you can see here, we've got him covered in the celestial gray. Wash off the brush. Now I use a cotton towel to dry off my brush because paper towels are going to leave deposits of cellulose on your brush. And what that's going to lead to is cracking and chipping of the bristles and splintering of the bristles. And you won't be able to keep your points that way. Next up, what I'm just going to do real quick is hit it with a bit of a heat gun. Oh, I missed a spot. I missed the top of his spear. That was 2 points. Okay, there we go. Now I'm going to hit it with the heat brush, and all this is going to do is help dry the paint quicker. Now you don't want to do that too long with a plastic model, otherwise it will start to melt. I have actually done that and melted spears, and they wind up drooping down, and it's hard to get them back to their original state. Okay, now we're ready for the next step. Nighthaunt Gloom. Now with Nighthaunt Gloom, it's a technical paint. It's essentially a high-density pigment wash. But even still, I'm going to thin it down a little bit because I don't want it to take over completely the color scheme that we already have here with the gray. And with this, I'm just going to go over the cloak with this. Some people will go over the entire model with it. I'm just going to go over the cloak and the spear and whatnot with it. So a nice thin brush with it. Just a nice, just to pick out all the little tears and rents within the cloak. And by doing this, it'll also help us see the highlights better. It'll help generate highlights because it'll sink down into those recesses and pool there, while the stuff on the higher ridges is going to be thinner because it's all running downhill. It'll leave a little bit of pigment up top, and everything else is going to go down into the valleys and the recesses. A little bit more Nighthaunt Gloom, I think. The palette. Yeah, that's. Now, if you want, you can just, do a little bit of this and not do the entire, like down here at the base where he's kind of coming up out of the ground. If you want, you could leave that as the celestial gray and just kind of with a wet, while the brush is wet with paint, just kind of lightly drag it into those areas to kind of give it a blend, a transition from one color to the other. You don't have to do that. That's purely up to you. This is your model, so you get to choose. If you want to have him in bright pink robes and, paint the blade candy cane colors, hey, guess what? That's what you're into. That's what you can paint it as. No one is going to stop you. At least I hope not. Because if anybody came in here right now and told me I was painting my miniatures wrong, there'd be an issue. This is your hobby. This is how you choose to spend your spare time and have fun, so yay. As long as you're having fun, you're having fun. Okay, now we've got... I've chosen to just do the entire smoke screen around him as the same color, just for simplicity's sake. Okay, I think that's looking just about good. We're going to do the blade with this as well. We're going to do the basically everything but the skull with this. The skull, I decided I want to keep that nice kind of grayish white color, because later on we're going to shade that with another color to make it look a little bit more like rotted bones. And since this is around Halloween while I'm painting this, I thought that would be a nice little send-up. Okay, so there you can see we've got all the areas covered that I want to cover with that tone. Once again, I'm going to hit it with the heat. Okay, there you go. Now you see how nasty he's looking. Okay, the next color we're going to be using is Rhinox Hide, and this is gonna be on the spear haft. So we're gonna get a little bit of that out onto my palette. A little bit of water, again, thinning it out, and we're just going to paint that right over the handle, being very careful around some of the details, like where the edge of the spear's blade connects to the pole and the hands holding the pole. We're just going to be very careful around those areas. There we go. And again, I'm sorry, I've got them out of frame from you. This is kind of difficult for me to paint down like this when I usually hold it really close up to my eyes. Okay, so you can see there, we just start painting that. Get around here at the butt of the weapon and along the pommel. And in between the two hands where he's holding it. Alright, so there's that. Now you could use this and go in and paint up the base with it, but I'm not going to bother with the base today. I have some special ideas for that later on. I will probably post that tutorial later. So we're going to close that paint pot, and we're going to move on to Incubi Darkness. And for this one, this is going to go on the cloak. And what I'm going to do with this is that kind of dragging the wet, or blending that wet paint down into another color, because for this, what I'm going to do with this is only do from the top, so he looks more solid, and he looks like he'll be kind of fading. So we're going to do that. This is almost like a dry brush technique. You really, really want your paints to be thin for this. That way you get that nice gradient color. So as you can see, gives you a nice gradient going down. You can really see it on this side though. Just a little bit more on this side. Okay. So now we got that done. Next up is lead belcher. Lead belcher is a metallic, kind of a tarnished silver, a dark silver if you will. And again, we're going to thin it. Get a nice point on the brush by rolling it. And then that's going to go right on the blade. So right here on the blade. I'm just going to paint that up. Now you notice some of the undercoating is still kind of coming through. That the Nighthaunt gloom is still coming through. That's okay, because what that's going to do is make it look more like a ghostly weapon. Okay, so there's the lead belcher on there. Again, dry off. Pop that down. Final step for this is going to be the Reichland Flesh Shade. So I'm going to hit this again with the heat, because this is supposed to be a quickie tutorial. Okay, now then, the Reichland Flesh Shade. Pop that up. Alright, now with washes, you could choose to thin them down if you wish. Personally, me, I'm just going to run this straight out of the pot. Because I feel the stronger the pigmentation for this project on this blade is going to make it look more rusted and more nasty. More tetanusy, I don't know how to say that, but basically if you cut yourself with this, you're definitely going to need a tetanus shot. It's basically what I'm going for here. Alright, now for the skull, I'm just going to add a little bit of water to it just to weaken it down a little bit more. Alright. And there you have him. One spooky ghost. I did it. And here's the other one I did using these same techniques. Now, of course, you can go back in if you wish and dry brush Celestial Gray and some whites to bring up the highlights just a little bit more. But those are more advanced techniques. This tutorial is basically just to give you, the beginner, an idea on how to paint up these guys really quick, really easily. And there we go. I am now very happy with how he looks. Of course, all of these, the models and the paints, are all available on our website, blackdog hobbyandgames.webs.com. Thank you.